Welcome to the bold analysis. The Kalenjin nation is revolting, or rather, the rebellion is building from the valley. I want you to listen to this soundbite by some people that are being interviewed in the Rift Valley County. Of course, painting a picture of how their expectation has not been met by the current administration. And it also comes out clearly on what exactly is their position, despite the fact that they're shareholders.
Remind William Ruto one thing. We elected him purposely, not because he was special than all the other candidates. We elected him because of his agendas that he had for the hustlers. Ajua sisi bado ni wale mahasla tu, hatujapata pesa. So asidhani na akipandisha bei ya mafuta na nyanyaza matajiri ama nini. Sisi ni bado ni mahaslas. In as much as hatuna magari, tuko na mapikipiki. Hii ya reshuffle of the cabinet. A reshuffle. Mimi sioni mtu mwenye ako na akili kwa hii cabinet yake. The only person mwenye ni kama ako na akili si mbaya sana ni Kithure Kindiki. At least he is doing so. We are seeing what he is doing. Lakini hizi zingine hizi hakuna mtu ako serious. Moses Kuria mtu tu anatoka tu bana kwenda studio na kuongea nonsense. Kama hakuna mtu mwenye ako normal kwa hiyo serikali yake, kama hakuna mtu mwenye ako normal, we have technocrats, people who can think, people who can reason, people who can assist William Ruto to deliver. Hatutaki alafu kesho 2027 akuja hapa hivi inakuwa kazi ngumu kuomba kura kwa sababu ya ujinga yenye wanafanya na hii makabineti yake.
Nashindwa, mbona hii Kenya Kwanza tulichagua na msisimuko fulani yenye tulikuwa nayo, lakini sasa manifesto yao imekuwa different. Tunaomba bwana president, tafuta Uhuru, muongee naye alikuwa anafanya aje hii mambo. Seek advice kwa sababu Uhuru alienda. Uhuru bwana, tutafute bwana, tusamee bwana.
Tuko na mtu anaitwa Didi Nyoro. Akasema hii serikali mafuta imewekwa bei nzuri, tukifika kitu ya kwanza kutambusha mafuta. Mafuta imepanda na juzi badala ya tutulizwe roho, kuli ameongea mheshimiwa mjumbe wetu wa Katundu. Anasema ati mafuta ataongezwa kila mwezi shilingi 10. Sisi tunaenda wapi? Mwananchi wa kawaida ameumia sana kusema ukweli. Sasa gari za hizi imepanda, kila kitu imepanda, hata hii tunaambia fatalisha ikiteremshwa bei na vile kila kitu imepanda, sisi tutapata nini? Mwananchi wa kawaida yako chini na sisi tumeumia. Sisi tunauliza kama itawezekana, hata kama hii subsidy irudi kabisa. Kama serikali inatuangalilia na inatufikiria mambo yetu, warudishe subsidy ndio mafuta iperemuke, kila kitu irudi chini, mwananchi wa kawaida aumie. Sasa si bottom up, ni bottom. Hata tumeumia, hata tujui tutasema nini.
Now, over the weekend, there is something you realize, and I played that video to show you. That's an impromptu interview. That's just people being interviewed in the streets. But during also a burial, just in the same place, Keter was also captured on video telling off the UDA leadership that what they promised their supporters is not coming forth. Or rather, taking a direct swipe at the head of state for what he terms as failure to conform with the bottom-up economic model in the wake of the recent fuel hikes. And I know Keter was highly profiled as a person who is going against the grain in the Rift Valley. And there are few lessons that, and for me, I think William Ruto will have to grasp from the likes of Keter. Apart from Keter, we've also seen Arap Kirwa, the former UDA vice chairperson, has also been dominantly appearing in TV sessions, explaining what, according to him, is the failure of Kenya Kwanza to address the cost of living questions. And this is what Keter said while attending that event.
What you mentioned about delocalization is bothering many teachers. And it will be worse because the fuel has been increased and the cost of transport will be crazy that no teacher will afford. The cost of living is on another level. Utasoma kwa bunge. You stood on a platform of bottom up. Kusaidia wale wanyonge, alafu uende juu. Lakini sasa hizi mmesahau. Mkiongeza fuel, mnatesa wale wa chini zaidi kushinda wale wa mbele. Ndio mmoja wako kwa hiyo wote sio. Na mtu waje kututisha hapo kidogo atio pagele wote ku amu serikali kwa mwa. Mami, yage rubuchi wekitu. Ama sawa basi, mko hapa. Mkitoka hapa mtuonyeshe petrol stations ya watu wa serikali na ile ya opposition. Magenge, ndivyo mandazi gete begelimono. Anane. Na mwanzo tuambie kiasi jini. Watu kumwamo lo sakwe sasa wanaona ni wale kimye mambo. Anane. Awesome. There are many people who are languishing in poverty. The school fees has been increased. The cost of living is on another level. And you spoke on the same basis. Mulisema yule rais ambaye alitoka hapo anajua kuongoza, hata mimi nikakubali. Lakini nyinyi you have made worse than Uhuru Kenyatta. Anane, ukasema une maisha maui? Anane.
And so many people projected and many people saw William Ruto as a perfectionist. The image that was projected at elections was a man who is a perfectionist. And everything was, according to Kenya Kwanza, was going wrong with former President Uhuru Kenyatta. In fact, everything was simplified to show that Uhuru Kenyatta was the problem this country was facing. In every campaign rally and everything that Uhuru Kenyatta was doing, William Ruto launched an opposition onslaught against the government he was serving as the deputy president. And from that's how the 2022 presidential contest, he mounted a contest against Raila Odinga to counter Raila Odinga, who was getting the support of the administration by then. And let me remind you of this soundbite at the presidential debate, when the head of state, who was then the deputy president, was asked about the issue of fuel. And he seemed to really know what the problem was.
What do you propose to do with that? Because there's also a current subsidy in place for that. What do you think is the solution to the rising cost of fuel, which, as you know, drives the cost of a number of other products?
I think the first thing that we need to do is to look at the taxes, because 50% almost of the cost of fuel in Kenya is taxes. I think it's time as a country we looked at, I think there are 15 different taxes on fuel. And I think it's time we relooked at how else do we raise revenue.
Which taxes would you be proposing to remove from fuel, the cost of fuel?
I think majority of the taxes that are in that bracket, I think there are almost 15 different taxes that are there. I do not have the specifics, but those 15, I think we need to interrogate these 15 different taxes. Which ones can we put aside so that, like other countries, we can limit the taxation on fuel?
Now that is why I normally say that the good Kenyans that tend to remind the people in this country that William Ruto gave promises not knowing what was happening behind the scene are actually wrong. If you look at the kind of response he gave on that issue of fuel, he said clearly that the issue is about taxes. And by that time he was saying that, Uhuru Kenyatta was reminding Kenyans that the issues of fuel is not a problem by Kenyan government by making. In It was about the ration war. Now, a year later, even Kenya Kwanza are finding themselves in a very tight spot trying to explain the same. In this podcast, I want to tell you why the Rift Revolt is unstoppable. What happened against Uhuru Kenyatta in Mount Kenya is exactly the same thing that will happen, or that is happening, to William Ruto in the larger Rift Valley. And those around him are actually leading the revolt. Number one reason why it is unstoppable is because the Rift Valley leaders are cheering Ruto to his downfall. The leaders he have around him, they've all turned into a cheering squad. And no one can come and explain. You know, there've been attempts to, or can come to confront William Ruto and tell William Ruto, the president, look here, these people are suffering. Everyone is cheering him in his defensive stand, that I am in charge, it is not my problem, and we are going to do it. If you look at the likes of Moses Kuria, the kind of messages they are sending out, they're cheering. If you look at leaders from the region, they have all been saying Mr. President is right. What the HOS need is someone who will face him when in office, in a very close door meeting, and tell him, Mr. President, something is wrong. It is simply getting it wrong. And it's unstoppable because those around him, no one can confront him. And of course, you only have a cheering squad. The other second reason why this is going to be a huge blow is because the 2022 campaign euphoria was largely built around poverty, ending poverty, and especially the hoodwinking the youth. It was the young population. Kenya has a young population, and Ruto knew that and took advantage of it. So, because it is the young people, it was not the elderly that Ruto spoke to. They had to pangwing with team were young people. And their expectation about William Ruto was beyond any ideal government. Any government has a limit. There's that which they can do. But you created a situation, you created a picture, you made a picture that we are going to change everything. As we speak, the poverty index, even in those areas that voted for President Ruto now, have not changed. The ballot, the vote they casted does not still count when you talk about the change in the poverty index. So because there's no that litmus change, someone will look around and say, what has changed? If anything, I'm still doing my boda, and in fact has become more difficult. So the issue of eradicating poverty that was likely pitched under the hustler agenda is eroded. Number 3. Ruto defenders in the Rift Valley are disarmed and they could have been dethroned. What am I saying? Look at Oscar Sudi. These are people that could come and defend William Ruto by everything. Did the campaigns and when they were Nateswa na Uhuru Kenyatta song. But as we stand, these people cannot defend William Ruto. They have been disarmed because any attempt, even if you support the president, how do you get the audacity to go and tell the public that the increase in the price of fuel is not going to affect you? How do you explain that? So being disarmed because they also know that if they go and project a picture to the public that Ruto is right, then the public will vilify them and tell them that they are the ones that are misleading President Ruto. So they've all took a retreat. They are all stepping back to look at how things are unfolding because they fear if I go to try defend Ruto, I might even lose my position because my opponents will not blame the president. They will blame you that you guys are misleading the president. So they've been disarmed because they fear of losing their seats. The popularity of the hustler agenda is not there. So that is why you will see the likes of Kirwa, Keter, and anti-Ruto regime, anti-Ruto wave actually sweeping the valley. And lastly, there is no excuse. Why am I saying? Just simplified, there is no excuse. President Ruto placed Kalenjin's leaders in strategic positions in government. You're talking about fuel. The person who is in charge of energy is Chirchir. Chirchir comes from the Kalenjin land. So even to the young people that come from that region, they actually tend to think it is some of their own that are turning against them. Yes. You know, I can tell you, in this Ministry of Energy, if that ministry could have been given to some Kamba somewhere, that person could have been shown the door by yesterday, could have been sacrificed by yesterday. So what is happening is those who are in those positions are Ruto's friends and Ruto's cronies. So there is no escape. There is no excuse that of course that person is being picked, is someone else, is sabotaging government. No way. You've picked someone from your place and they are holding very prime positions, decision-making positions. And that is why I'm telling you, even who is head of EPRA, Daniel Kipto, if I'm not wrong, it all comes from the same place. So it's very difficult to manage. And even Ruto to eject some of these people, it's a big nightmare. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my take.